So the last couple weeks, we've been having conversations about dressing your age. And you might say to yourself, Brittany, what does this have to do with Bassem Youssef and the Nelk Boys and Netanyahu? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Much like when Trump and JD Vance mocked Zelensky for, quote, not owning a suit, we obviously know it's a form of bullying to mock people for the way they show up to things. And yet we must set a standard. We know boomers have utilized that talking point as dressing your age as a way to sort of make you feel bad about not reaching certain milestones or to mock you for the way that you present because you're alternative. But we also know that if we want to be community members, adults in those communities, elders, people of wisdom, then I do think the way you keep your home, the way you keep your body, the way you groom is a reflection of your ability to handle responsibility. Now we know wolves in sheep's clothing can also look nice. Okay, so we're not saying, oh, if you look nice, you're a good person. Oh, if your apartment's nice, you're a good person. That's stupid. We're saying often, more than not, the way you keep your body, the way you keep your home, the way you keep your whatever is a sign of your ability to have a relationship to that thing. Why is it bad to self-harm? Because you're having a negative relationship to the thing, right? Why do we go to therapy? Because we're having a bad relationship to the thing. We're having a disruption in our relationship to the thing being ourselves, the way we keep ourselves, okay? So without being triggered and without, because I know we've had this conversation a lot and people just like really, it's so funny. People will be like, Brittany, I fundamentally disagree with you, and then say everything I just said. So obviously we're having a little bit of an issue with language, but we're having a little bit of issue with our mental health. If your comment when I read it is exactly what I just said, but you can't hear me because the language I'm using reminds you of your mother. Okay? So remember that how you present can matter. I remember when there was an election over in the UK, the conservatives were trying to prove that the liberals were bad by showing the conservatives in suits and the liberals in like everyday clothing. That is a form of weaponizing what you look like. I'm not here to weaponize what you look like. I'm here to encourage you to grow up if you are a grown up. I'm not talking to 22-year-olds, but like Bassem points out to the Nelk bros, you're 30. You can't feign, oh, I'm just a boy in my little hat. I'm just a boy. I don't know anything. I'm just a boy. No, you're not just a boy. You're a 30-year-old man. Let's go. So this is what Bassem says to them. And this is what I say to you. This conversation about dressing your age has nothing to do with 19-year-olds. I am talking to people who are old. I'm talking to people who have reached enough of their alleged milestones, or should have, to start talking about getting a little bit better with the way we show up, okay? So again, I'm not saying you're perfect. I'm saying, hey, in case you haven't started, you should probably start preparing to be an adult. And I say this as somebody who is not the adult in the room yet. I am an adult. I pay my bills. But I'm not the adult in the room like my parents are grown. I'm not the adult in the room like some of these people in their 40s and 50s, because hello, I'm not in my 40s and 50s. But in order to prepare yourself for this, you have to prepare yourself for this. If you consistently tell yourself, I can be young, I can dress young, I can be, immature, then you will be the Nelk bros, what are they, boys, interviewing a war criminal who's committing a genocide and just be like, I'm just a baby. I'm just a baby. Exactly. You're just a baby, but you want to be seen as a grown up. And at the same time, you want to be seen as just a baby. Let's make decisions, people. Are we the grown-ups in the room or are we the babies in the room? And if you're the babies, be quiet. And if you're the adults, let's go. Seat at the table, okay? If you grew up in a household like I did, the little kid table, you got to graduate to the big kid table. And then you got to sit with the adults because there's an expectation of responsibility that should follow. The responsibility part is the dilemma. You want to be grown, but you want none of the responsibility. Okay, so let's talk about responsibility today, because I'm dead serious that I think there's a lot of stuntedness happening in the world. And I understand we're all traumatized and I'm here for it. Like, that is going to create stuntedness naturally. But I don't want to hear anybody out here criticizing boys. Okay, I don't want to hear any woman, especially any feminist, talk about, oh, these boys can't even have an apartment. They dress like little children and then sit around and turn it around. You can dress like a child. Like, let's make it make sense, okay? If we know what a man-child is, do you know what a girl who won't grow up is? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, gender doesn't even play into this, but yet there is sort of an allowance for immaturity to appear. Like, in one way, okay, in another way is not okay. Immaturity is immaturity. It's not always represented by what you wear, but it's often represented in how you show up. Okay? And so I just want you to pay attention to that. I just want you to pay attention. I'm not saying you have to do anything. I'm not making a prescription, but I am making a suggestion based off desired outcome. Okay. Everybody wants the community, but nobody wants to participate, right? You know, they say the price of a community is showing up. Let's talk about it. Okay. Here we go.
Podcast. This is actually our very first live episode we've ever done. It's an interesting one for our first live, but
We're making history.
We're making history. We have Steiny here, and I want to welcome Bassem Youssef to the Full Send podcast. Thank you for being with us. How you doing?
Thank you for having me, guys.
Of course. Obviously, last week was controversial for us, to say the least. We had someone on the podcast, very controversial.
Okay, so let's just like look at the way that the setup is, right? So they're all dressed pretty casual, but there's a difference, right? Bassem is dressed appropriately casual for his age. The boys have this one, whatever his name is, has very defensive, posturing, but he's also dressed less casual. This guy in the middle is obviously like the leader. He talks, but look at the background, look at the aesthetic, look at the way they're trying to present themselves. And then like take that into consideration as we process this podcast, right? Like take it into consideration, okay? Discord said, Brittany, do you consider dressing in some styles to be dressing like a child? Because many people would associate certain styles with childness, but it's like extremely expensive, really nice materials. Yes, you can, listen, guys, you can dress in the most expensive $15,000 dress and still dress like a child. The cost of an item doesn't dictate the maturity level of the item. Okay? It's a combination of all things. It's like a grown man. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio being worth $1 billion and still dating 25-year-olds. What does him being a billionaire matter? It's still childish. So you can spend money on an item and still be a child. Like you can still dress like a child. It's a combination of making wise decisions with your investments that reflect the inside on the outside. Okay? So did you see that new article, Leonardo DiCaprio, talk about another man-child, saying he feels stunted at 32? He feels like he's a 32-year-old. Yeah, but you're not. You're 50. You're not. You're 50. It's okay to say that in therapy. It's less okay to say that to justify your dating habits. Okay? So we have to remember, we're so upset with our elders acting like big kids. Why are we repeating the habits? I am so sick of old people, right? I'm so sick of them being out here saying they're the adults in the room when they're not acting like it. So I certainly don't want to mimic the same behavior as I age, right? Chad says, so is Lolita style dressing like a child then? It depends on the Lolita style. It depends on the Lolita style. I already covered this in two streams ago, guys. If you haven't seen it, I already covered this. Depends on the Lolita style. Look at Bassem. He's in a casual t-shirt with casual sneakers and yet looks more polished and more his age than the boys to his left. Depends on the style. Both sneakers, different types of sneakers. Both sportswear, different kind of sportswear, right? There is a difference. It shows up different. Now, this might not be something that processes or makes sense to you, but hey, 99% of the world's not going to get it because 99% of the world isn't performing it. Remember, the world is the place that it is because we are doing this as a group project. Only a few of us are making an effort. You can feel like you're making the effort, but the world doesn't reflect that. The numbers don't reflect that. Everybody thinks they're making an effort, but the world is the way it is because most of us obviously aren't making the effort, right? How can the world be the way that it is if a majority of us are making the effort? Okay? So we have to pay attention to that. Pay attention. The world cannot be the way that it is unless a majority of us suck. And we all suck. So like we have to do better, okay? Okay.
Controversial for us, to say the least. We had someone on the podcast, very controversial, as I said, to say it in the least form. What was your reaction when you saw that we had Benjamin Netanyahu on the full?
Well, I didn't know about I am sorry to say, like because I'm not your demographic, so I didn't know who the Nelk Boys is. But like I found my DMs exploding. So did you see what the Nelk Boys did?
So look at his shirt. It's like a little hummingbird with the Palestinian flag. So cute. Okay. Very nice shirt. Very clean. Very pressed. He's well groomed. He looks really nice. And he's explaining that I don't know who you are. You're not my demographic, which is also very important. What's also very important is that he's saying your content isn't for me. So think about the adult people who only watch content that's made for 12-year-olds and then process that those people are grown-ups. See how it doesn't matter that you're a grown-up and pay your bills if the only content you consume is literally made for 12-year-olds? That doesn't mean adults can't enjoy art, Pokemon, anime, cosplay, because a lot of that stuff is for adults. Fun fact, anime is not just for kids. So much anime is literally so inappropriate for children because anime is a medium to express art. Anime itself does not mean for children. Anime means Japanese animation. That's like saying like animated films are just for kids when we know animated films are literally not just for kids. because the storyline is what matters, right? So yes, the Nelk Boys interviewed Netanyahu, and the toughest questions they really asked him were like Burger King or McDonald's. Though I think at one point Bassem brings up that they did ask him like one good question, but otherwise it was a softball interview. They were paid by Israel to do it. They were funded by Israel to fly out. Remember, all of those content creators you see going to Israel are being paid by Israel to fly out. So they are paying content creators to give them good PR, and they're falling for it.
Like, who the fuck are the Nelk Boys? And then I didn't know that you're that big. I'm sorry. Again, I'm not your targeted demography, so I apologize for my ignorance. So, and then I started following what's going on and the aftermath. And being in the public eye for 15 years, I understand what does it mean to be in a very tough situation, and now trying to crawl out of that situation. It's difficult, especially with the backlash, because the bigger you are, the bigger the backlash. And well, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of people when they knew that I'm on the podcast, like, yeah, go there, do them, F them. And I said, like, there's nothing to gain from just canceling people without knowing what went wrong. Because I think it is better to actually to learn from what's happening and look at the bigger picture instead of just like, destroying two young people like you, because that doesn't serve anybody, right? It makes people happy that you guys are falling, but...
And notice that he says two young people like you, because I remember when Dr. Kirkanda said, oh, they're only in their 30s, they're so young, because he's in his 50s. Remember that. Remember that 30 is grown and you should know better, but also to a 50-year-old, you're probably like a kid still, because that's the reality of it. The older you get, oh no, they're going to block this stream. YouTube's giving me a warning that they're going to block the stream. I'm going to pause it more often to kind of get to the point. If not, I'm going to find the exact timestamp I want to show you. I think it's at 6 minutes. So maybe I can kind of show you that leading up to it. It looks like the Nelk Bros are going to block my stream. But the point I'm trying to convey here is that dressing your age isn't just like, guys, just because conservatives talk about responsibility doesn't mean you have to neglect it, right? Like, I fuck conservatives, right? Nothing good comes out of conservative policy. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that just because conservatives talk about responsibility, it doesn't mean leftists can't be responsible. If anything, the left is advocating for more responsibility. We're advocating for cultural responsibility. And American culture is so bad, I don't even know how to explain it to you. Like, I don't even know how to explain to you how bad American culture is seeped into our subconscious, how violent, uneducated, and bigoted we are. Like, I can't even explain how bad it is. If you, because Americans always do like, well, what about the other people? What about the other part of the world? And what about these people? We are so fucked. And I'm just saying, like, a part of that is reflected in the fact that none of us have to grow up. We're in such a privileged country that nobody has to grow up. Think about that. I want you to process that, because they think growing up is paying your bills. If only. If growing up was paying your bills, then boomers did great. If growing up means paying your bills, then I don't want to hear one complaint against a boomer. But we know that's not what it requires to grow up. We also need you to be emotionally stable. We need you to show up. So the reason I say the dressing your age matters is because if you're emotionally stunted, it will come out in how you dress. Not always, not with every type of style, but it can show up in the way you dress. In the same way that if I go to your apartment and you're living like a hoarder, I'm going to assume you're having a mental health crisis. Without judging you, Habibi, I think you might be in a mental health crisis, right? That's kind of like saying I can't be concerned for my friend if I go to their house and, they have a hoarding situation. It's like, yeah, I think something might be going on. But if you're like, oh, well, that's just a judgment because you're judging people. And it's like, yeah, sometimes the judgment is also like accurate, but it's like not to condemn. It's to be concerned. Like, please let me be concerned about you. Like, you're literally showing up. So look at this. It says when you're 30 years old hanging out with 20-year-olds. Yeah, like, okay. It's funny, but like, I don't think this is something to admire. I don't think it's something to admire to be like, I'm going to be the old guy who shows up to hang out with the young kids and is like, what up, my brethren? What up, kids? You know what I mean? It's like cringe, bro. Like, literally cringe. Can someone please be the adult in the room? You know what I mean? Like, Uncle Iroh is a good example, because Uncle Iroh was like so young and wholesome, but he was never their friend. Remember, Uncle Iroh is not friends with the kids. He is their elder, but he's goofy, he's funny, he's silly, he's lighthearted, but he's not their friend. You know what I'm saying? He's not their friend. And that's the point, okay? Yes, Discord. Yes, this GIF. How do you do, fellow kids? And it's like, you're obviously not a kid, bro. Okay, let's see if I can play the stream again without it cutting me off.
The bigger picture is, why did this happen? And why was this, were you used? Part of you is your responsibility.
Okay, I'm going to speed it up a little bit. Maybe that will help.
And part of you not knowing. So I heard many of the justification that happened saying that, well, you know, it was a great opportunity. And I'm like, wouldn't you like get him on the podcast? I said, yes, if somebody told me, would you?
No, now he's talking too fast. Okay, so he's being very compassionate. He's meeting them where they are. He's explaining, like, I see why you fell for it.
You interview Netanyahu? I was like, hell yeah, but I'll be prepared. And I think the biggest part of you that you were not prepared. 2 years under like the biggest genocide in our history, you guys had no idea what's going on. If somebody told me, hey, you're going to be tomorrow on the starting five of the Lakers in the NBA, I was like, that's a great opportunity, but I'm not prepared. I'm not going to make a fool out of myself. So it's not about you platforming someone or someone giving a chance for free speech. You were used. Right?
You were used. Exactly. Israel uses you. And these streamers think they're getting opportunities. You're being used. You're literally being used. You know what I mean? And it's hard to fathom because you just think you're having a conversation. You just think it's a cool opportunity. I've been there where I just think I'm having a cool conversation. You realize like, oh, damn, they used me to give credit. As a woman, they used me to say like, see a girl talk to me. And I'm like, damn, like that wasn't my intention. And that's why those collaborations are taken down. Chat says, I mean, if you look at the media in the 90s and 2000s, there's a romanticization of teenagehood in high school. It reflects culture immaturity. And how many adults wish they could go back to high school? If I had $1 for every millennial I met who wanted to do high school over, I would be shook. Like I would be so rich. I am shook. I would be so rich. I mean, because like, that's the difference. I never want to be a child again. Let me say this so fucking clearly. You could not pay me enough to be a child again. To be dependent on somebody else to make decisions for me, my clothes, my food, where I live, paying my bills, so I don't have a say in anything I do in my life. You couldn't pay me enough to be a dependent on somebody, okay? And that's the problem. That's the difference. Is like, you couldn't pay me enough to be a dependent on somebody. And dependent is very different than having a stay-at-home partner. Let me just make that abundantly clear. My partner is not dependent on me. Because my partner tomorrow could go get a job and say, fuck you, and get an apartment in 2 seconds. And that's the difference. I know a lot of you put yourselves in financial situations where you literally couldn't get an apartment tomorrow or get a job tomorrow. Don't do that to yourself. I would never let my partner stay home and not have a job if I thought it was ruining their possibility of being able to be an adult in the world if I died tomorrow. And that's the difference, is I would never, ever let my partner be in that situation, and nor would they. They know that if I die tomorrow, they're going to be okay. And that's the difference, right? So there are people, though, who really create a scenario in which they are now dependent. So they are like a kid again, and they have no say in the world. We didn't fight this hard for our fucking civil rights for us to go back to being dependents. We didn't fight this hard to be adults, to go back to being, dependents, right? Just said, aren't these kids in their 30s? Yes, they are. Exactly. Yes, they are.
And it didn't start with the podcast. It started 2 years ago. In March 2023 when you went to Israel, because I know, like I told you, that Israel has increased their Hasbara budget, which is their propaganda machine, with $150 million. And part of that money goes to influence people in college campuses, hire influencers like you.
See, $150 million towards advertisement. Chess says, I don't like how Bassem went in there as well because he's also being used by them. So it's portrayed as they didn't know what they did. They didn't know what they did. Listen to me when I say this. They are stupid. They were used. They have no idea what they just did. And they're 30 years old. Please pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you. Adults aren't growing up, and we are repeating the same habits as boomers. We are becoming boomers because you are not growing up. You are making more money. You are, reaching status, but you are not becoming adults. You are not understanding. How are my parents so good at noticing scams in grocery stores, but can't for the life of them see how Trump is scamming them? Because they're not emotionally mature enough to process the difference. Do you know what I'm saying? That's the difference. Is Bassem is holding them accountable, saying, you're 30, you should know better. And I'm saying, we got to start telling adults, you should have known better. Because pretending that they do know better is also taking away the reality that we're not actually educating our population. We're not actually raising our kids better. We need to hold ourselves accountable. We're not raising adults well. We're raising bad adults who don't know better by the time they reach 30, and they don't know better. You want to pretend they know better because you can't imagine it, but I meet adults every fucking day who don't know better. And I am fully in my radical acceptance era, girls. I am radically accepting you actually don't know better, and that's how bad we are as people. We are so bad at raising adults. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how many people I meet every day that are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. I literally do not need to pay attention. When I tell you we all live in bubbles, we are not being raised the same. Okay, I meet 60-year-old people every day who don't know anything. Every day who don't know shit, bro. So like, I'm not surprised the Nelk bros don't know anything. Why would they? Why would they have to know anything? You can be dumb as shit and be a millionaire in this country. You can literally be absolutely dumb as rocks and be successful as fuck. And you know what kills you is you're probably thinking, wait, I'm so smart. How am I not rich? So they must be really smart. No, they're just willing to do things you're not willing to do in terms of ethics. You know what I mean? To some extent, like I'm not willing to interview Netanyahu. I'm not doing that, but they are. I'm not willing to let Israel fly me out and sponsor me. I'm not doing that. Do you know what I'm saying? But they're willing to do that. So again, you can hold them responsible like Bassem's about to do. You can hold them responsible while acknowledging that like, hey, you were tricked. Now the question is, are you going to do it a second time? Because now you know. Now we gave it to you. Now we gave you the answer. Now the question is, will you do it tomorrow? See, Asmin was given too many opportunities. Asmongold knows better, and now he keeps doing it, so he's just a bad person. See, we thought Asmongold was going to have a change of heart when he was called out, when he said those horrible things about Palestinians, but then he didn't. He doubled down and kept going. Even though he apologized, he doubled down and kept going, right? So at the end of the day, it didn't matter. Now he's made his bed. You have to give people an opportunity. You have to give them an opportunity. And then if they don't give into the opportunity, that's it. Okay, that's it. And that's the difference here, okay? Chet says, how can you make someone rise to the occasion if they truly do not want to grow up? I see a lot of Peter Pans out here. You can't. You have to just do it yourself. See, this is the funny thing about me talking about dressing your age and all that stuff, is people were mad for themselves. You were triggered for yourself because you don't want to grow up. You don't have to, Habibi. You can be like everybody else. You think you're unique as a millennial because you want to shop at Hot Topic in your 30s? You're like every boomer I've ever met in my life who didn't want to grow up. Congratulations. And by the way, let's not even talk about fast fashion, capitalism, giving into like, destroying the planet. Let's not even talk about responsibilities in that sense. But like, sure, you think you're a rebel. You think you're different than boomers. You think you're literally different than them because you're dressing young. You're not different than boomers. You're the same. Nobody wants to grow up. Okay, and I'm not saying you can't wear hand-me-down Hot Topic clothes, but let's be real. Hot Topic, you can't invest in better clothing that's goth. You know what I mean? Like actually goth. Anyways, okay. The whole point is everyone wants to think they're better, but you're just repeating the patterns you were raised with because we're traumatized. Okay, Chess says I agree with you, and unfortunately, none of this is a specific problem to our time. This is just something us humans had to deal with since the beginning of time. It's like a cognitive hole. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's all that it is. And I'm just saying we're repeating the pattern, always repeating the pattern. Okay, I'm going to try to play it again because it gave me a warning again, but let's try again.
Them into fancy trips to Israel, giving them this filtered, layered picture that is made up, that is fake. I mean, I watched it yesterday. And I was cringing not because like you were showing how cool Israel is or they have nightclubs.
You're saying our Nelk video?
Yeah. So because when you mentioned Palestine, do you remember we're going to a place that is so dangerous now? Palestine. And then you are in a bus and then like special forces come in and kidnap you. And this is kind of like IDF simulation, counterterrorism. And then they're telling you, we have a dog that only breeded in Israel. It can kill a man. And you understand that like the kind of psychopathic behavior of a country that like tells you like part of its like tourist attraction that we're killing terrorists and we're breeding dogs to kill human beings. And by the way, I don't know, part of the anger is like just last year there was like a kid with autism and Down syndrome that was killed by one of these dogs. And then the next scene is let's go and see Palestinian family. And the only Palestinian family in this video are just like a bunch of Bedouins in a tent, a guy who's married 2 wives, and he tells you my whole life is about camels and goats and chicken. And then you find like a 60-year-old one. I just live on pita bread and milk.
Okay, pause. Okay, yes, I'm going to pause it every time it kind of gives me a warning so I don't get my stream taken down. Exactly. When you show Israel, you show how beautiful it is. When you show Palestine, it's like a person who doesn't even represent the average Palestinian person. That's propaganda, Habibis. That's propaganda. Okay? That's what that is, right? Ugh. And like, that's what I'm trying to say is like, it takes a level of understanding. Even me, I made this mistake this last few years. Now, this was the irony because I've made this mistake with people because I always want to see the best in people. I do, guys. I always see the best in people. But I'm telling you, we are all falling for some level of propaganda or we're settling for a specific kind of life. You are allowed to dictate your subjective reality. You are allowed to decide what you want from life and how you want to show up in life, whether you're the Nelk Boys or anybody else. But at the end of the day, some of us, you know, we're trying to do something different. You know, you want to hold all these content creators accountable in ways you could never hold yourself accountable. We need to decide, are we holding ourselves, because I think we should hold ourselves accountable in similar ways in our own life. Obviously, it's a little different when you are a public figure and you have a following, but then don't discourage your content creators from wanting to grow up because you don't want to grow up. Do you see what I'm saying? You want your content creators to be held to a higher standard. You want your politicians held to a higher standard, but then you don't want to hold them to that higher standard because maybe what does that say about you, right? But are people in charge of other people supposed to grow up more than the people who are following them? Or like, what do you want from people, right? Discord said, come on, Brittany, Hot Topic is great. I have to travel 3 hours to get one near me. For some of us, it's the best we got. Oh, exactly. Stop. Pause. It's the best we have. Okay, and Habibis, listen to what I'm saying. I'm not coming for you if it's the best you have. You know what privilege is, guys? Privilege is not having to deal with the best we have. That's what privilege is. Privilege is having choice. If you're doing the best you can with what you have, that's not privilege. So I'm saying I am in a privileged position. When you are a grown up, you're aiming to be in a privileged position so you can have the choice to break generational curses and get your family out of poverty, get your family into the next stage of living, get yourself into the next stage of living. That's the point, is that I'm not asking people who are not in positions of privilege to do anything except get yourself into a position of privilege if you want. But if you're in a position of privilege or you want to make a position of privilege come true, then you have to make it a goal. That's what I'm saying. And I do remember the last time I was on a Hot Topic and I said, oh, I'm too grown for this. I do. I distinctly remember shopping. I'm getting so excited because Hot Topic's not exactly inexpensive. I think it's expensive. I walked into Hot Topic and I looked at a pair of boots for like $100 and I just sat there and went, I'm too old for this. I'm too old for the quality that is Hot Topic. I'm too old for this. And I've loved Hot Topic since I was in high school. And when Brittany says she's too old for this, it means that she has decided that she wants to invest in something other than Disney Hot Topic because she's ready to go to the next part of her journey, my journey, right? So again, I cannot look at these Nelk bros, look at these boys who are 40 years old with millions of dollars, who are still dressing like they're in their 20s and make fun of them if I'm going to turn around and not hold myself accountable, right? Why are we making fun of boys on the internet for being man-childs, and you don't think you're doing the same thing? What's the difference? Like, what is literally the difference between a boy with money who won't grow up and a girl with money who won't grow up? And I'm just saying it's the level of responsibility we take on that represents what I'm talking about. And that's emotional, monetary, that's everything. And it can show up in the way that we live. Again, I'm not coming for people, okay, who like, this is the best thing you've ever experience. This is like your joy. This is what's good enough for you right now. There was one point in my life where I literally was at the dollar store and that was like the best I ever felt was being able to afford the dollar store. So I'm not sitting here and coming for you, but I'm saying, I'm letting you know that in order for me to not think the dollar store was the best I could do, I had to also make an effort to change the way I thought about myself and what I deserved, and also thought about how I showed up in the world to change my relationship with consumer waste, with spending money, with overspending. And that's the dilemma, is like, it's really hard because it's all based in trauma, right? Like, we're traumatized. And I'm saying, like, I want you to know that it's okay that you're traumatized, but if you're ready to heal, there's a thing to that, right? Chet says that's why you think they didn't know what they're doing. They're literally associated with Tate. They're horrible people who manipulate everyone by pretending to be dumb. They have white millennial overgrown toddler male privilege. So I don't. Okay, like when you see Aiden Ross get on a live stream and he goes, "What's a fastest?" He goes, "Hey guys, what's a fastest?" When you see streamer boys who have millions of dollars go to Google and then Google on Google to get to Google, and they happen to all know Andrew Tate, do we think they're as smart as Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate is the kingpin. These are the followers. The followers are not going to be as smart as the kingpins. So giving them the same amount of credit feels really weird. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, these boys are literally eating their toenails on stream while Andrew Tate is sex trafficking women. Can we please focus? Yeah, the boys who are eating their toenails, okay, and asking what's the fastest, maybe not as smart as the Andrew Tates who are literally sex trafficking women. Okay? So you need to remember that. Chet said, I don't know about Tate being smart. Guys, don't make me lecture you again. Stop calling evil people dumb because it messes you up. Listen, that's what this commenter is trying to say. She's trying to say, or they're trying to say, he's trying to say, don't call these men dumb. You're taking away the responsibility. No. They're dumb, smart, smart, dumb, smart, dumb. Smart people are very unethical. Smart people are not ethical people. We know that throughout history. How many fucking scientists and doctors were incredibly unethical people? Okay. So again, we need to make sure that we know that being smart does not mean ethical. Okay? Obviously. And if it is, then what the fuck is your excuse? You guys think you're so smart, then why isn't it showing up in your life? Because what does smart even mean? Everybody thinks they're smart. Everybody thinks they're dumb. Nobody thinks, you know what I mean? Because like, what is the, like for me, smart is your capability of making a decision. Dumb is your ability to interact with that decision. Like, you're so smart, dumb. You're not literally incapable, but you're so dumb because of your action, but you're not actually incapable of making a better decision. You just refuse to. Okay?
So even if October 7th didn't happen, you were used in a propaganda machine to tell people this is what you need to know about Palestinians. They're just like a bunch of people with cows and goats marrying two people, living in a tent, happy with a pita bread and milk. So you were recruited in March 2023 and you were activated in July 2025, right? So, and I'm saying this because I'm saying this out there for all of the...
Chet says, I feel like pretending to be dumb has been a get out of cancellation free card. Okay, but that's because we're stupid. That's because we're stupid. That's why I'm saying it doesn't matter if you made... Okay, it doesn't matter if you knew better. The decision was made. So now it... Okay, stop, pause. It does matter if you knew better or not. Because when we hold people accountable, we have to meet them where they are. We have to literally meet them where they are, right? So when I see an adult make a decision, there's a correlation between dumb people and robbery and theft and violence. That's why we want to educate the population, because the more we educate a population, the less that occurs until we educate a population enough, and then it occurs in a different way. White collar, right? Crime. It's like versus the crime you think of when you think of like, oh, the police need to come in. And like, you have to understand that at a certain level, like physical crime is for stupid people and paperwork crime is for smart people. And yet they're both so fucking dumb they can't just get a real fucking job and not do crime. But there's a difference. So we want to educate the population so crime goes down, but then we want to make sure the population is ethical so the other crime doesn't go up. But then we have politicians and governments being the biggest criminals of them fucking all. Look at Netanyahu. He's literally a criminal. Look at Trump. He's literally a criminal. And then boom, they're in the highest positions in their countries. So they're the ones using these boys because they are stupid enough to fall for it to push propaganda. That's what I'm saying. Sneeko, Destiny, all of them who are doing so much work for other people, they're stupid, but they're smart to their audiences. But they are stupid. You know what I mean? So like they're so stupid, they're letting Israel use them. But that's the point. All of us are stupid. Everyone uses us. I'm stupid enough to have been used. I'm still not at fault for being manipulated, but I am responsible for making sure I catch it in the future. Because if we're always going to let bad guys be a little smarter than us, then we're stupid. Okay, bad people are always going to take advantage of you. Do you know better? And the question is like, not until you do.
Influencers around there, because there's a lot of people got backlash. There's influencers who went there like wearing IDF. It's like, we didn't know what was going on. Like, he was like, I didn't know I'm kissing a Jewish wall.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely admit that. I mean, I think we were both just ignorant to what was going on over there. And obviously, you know, I knew he was, I'll be honest, I thought he was controversial, but I was definitely ignorant to what was going on in that area. And I can
You have to remember too, like, not a lot of people watch Palestinian footage. Most of the people in my life that I'm trying to get them to understand Palestine aren't watching the footage. They're not interviewing or watching the interviews. They're not like reading the books. They're just hearing about it and they're tired and they can't pay their fucking grocery bills. And they're like, fuck Palestine, fuck Israel. Like, they're tired. They're like, bro, I can't afford my rent. I don't give a fuck what's happening. Right? Hold on, I got another warning. They're tired. They're exhausted. Okay, they're already working as it is. They're already struggling as it is. So for them, they're like, I don't care, dude. And I don't blame them for not caring. But what I think is interesting is then when they don't care is to go on and say, yo, if I was around during Hitler's time, I would have taken down a Nazi. No, you wouldn't have, because it's happening right now and you're not doing shit. Which is exactly why Hitler could rise to power the way he did. Because we have this illusion of being the hero that is absolutely a farce. We really believe that if we went back in time, we would have been heroes. Do it now. But you can't. You can't even stop dressing like a child. You can't stop, acting like a kid. You want to fucking go over here. Being a child is thinking you'd go back and take down Hitler. Do you know what being a child is? Thinking you'd literally kill baby Hitler. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, everybody wants to give themselves so much fucking credit for being the adult in the room. But, like, how is that showing up in real life? Because is it, you know what I mean? Hold on, YouTube's still giving me like a warning. If you plan to continue, just FYI, you've been given a warning. Hold on, we're almost at the part that I really want to show you. I wanted to show you all 30 minutes of it, but I'll just show you like the next minute and a half, and then we'll call it a day because YouTube is being a bitch. Okay, let's see.
Admit that, and it was definitely, I wish we could have gone back and, had 2 weeks to sit down with someone like yourself and just, we should have grilled him.
Chat says, why are they giving you a warning? So basically the Nelk Boys have copyrighted their stream. So basically they're saying, hey, YouTube has notified you that you're using too much of somebody else's content that isn't allowed. So they're going to like take down my stream. They're going to like, if the stream cuts out, I'll come back. But basically that's what happens is the Nelk Boys, whatever, have that basically made it so their stream is considered like it's automatically copyrighted, right? It's not done with every content creator, obviously. It's just like usually the capitalistic money making ones. Like the Wizard Liz does it on hers. Every time I watch her content, they give me a warning. The Nelk Bros, like people who are really in this capitalist game, they really want to take your money from you, or they vice versa. They think you're taking their money from them. But like, I'm not going to watch this podcast on my own. I'm only interested in this podcast for stream. Like, I'm never going to give them a view. You know what I mean?
50,000, 100,000 times harder, but something we can't get back, and we'll probably always
of course, but I know you can't get back this like trip in Israel, but I'm just telling you, this was like part of a much bigger.
Hold on, chat says, so he never wondered why he was controversial. Now I don't buy it. They just didn't do their homework, which is worse. Well, that's the point. That's when you don't have to buy anything. Guys, do you talk to people? Most people I know absolutely nothing about Netanyahu. I didn't know anything about Netanyahu. I didn't know anything about Netanyahu. When October 7th happened, I ignored it. I was overwhelmed. I was talking to friends, both in places impacted by the tragedy at the time. And I was overwhelmed with the situation. Everyone's like, talk about it. Talk about Palestine, Brittany, talk about Palestine. And I was fucking PDA triggered, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to know right now. Give me a second. Even though 10 years ago, I was making content about how Israel was fucking up Palestine. But that Brittany at that time was too fucking tired as it was. I was like, shit. Okay. And I was already fucking getting propaganded by America. And just for a second, I was like, oh man. And I was talking to like Israeli friends. And I was like, oh shit, that's so sucky. And then I read a book and then I educated myself. And then I did the research and I was like, okay, I'm back on it. Pro-Palestine. Right? You act like me, out of all people, should know better, and I didn't. So if I didn't know better, you think other fucks did? That's what I'm saying. People are stupid because I'm supposed to be the smarter person in the room, and I'm still an idiot. That's all I am saying. I'm saying you expect too much of people. And I'm telling you, we expect too much of people. I am no longer going to expect people to be better, but I will expect us to hold them to account. But I will not expect them to be better. I know you didn't know better. I know you were stupid. You better make amends. Make amends right now. Do it. Okay? Make amends. That's it. Do better now that you know better. And if they don't do better now that we know better, then that's it. That's more of an indicator. Now you can hold them a step more accountable. Just like we hold kids and adults to a different level of accountable because they don't know better. Same thing with adults. I don't think all adults know better, but I think once they do know better, okay, that's the way we hold them accountable.
Propaganda effort, right? And a country that spends
And
$150 million on...
Just a reminder that America hasn't claimed that Netanyahu is a war criminal. That's other people around the world. Netanyahu is only a war criminal in certain countries. Only certain countries are acknowledging Palestine as its own state. American propaganda is real, bro, and most people don't pay attention to politics.
Its image, they are covering something. When they spread all of these propaganda, it's like, we're not starving people in Gaza. You understand that this conversation has been happening for 2 years. First of all, I'm not absolving you from your trip. You guys are not little kids. You are fucking 30 years old, right? People in your age have families and they have a career, and you need to stop. I'm just saying this because you're my little brothers, but you're not little, right? You need to stop infantilizing yourself. It's like, we're just stupid people doing stupid stuff. You're 30 years old and you need to be aware of what's happening in the world and that your reach and your platforms mean something and it affects people. And I think the biggest reason why people were so upset for you, not because you brought someone and you didn't contest him, that it is the talking point that he used is the same talking points that have been used for 2 years to kill thousands of people, right? So, I mean, and part of the reason why people were so angry is that forget, even if you don't...
Okay, it's giving me a warning again. That's what I wanted to show you. Okay, we're done because it's going to keep giving me a warning. That's what I wanted to show you. Yes, he's talking to them like they're his little brothers because compared to his age, they are. He's also holding them accountable. He's also meeting them where they are. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to meet you where you are and hold you accountable and so on. Same with myself. I'm trying to meet myself where I am and hold myself accountable. And we're trying to make an effort forward. That's what I'm trying to say. We have to dress our age, act our age, pull ourselves up and make sure we actually are community participating in the community in an ethical way. We have to remember that our positions, whether you're a social media person or a person in your neighborhood, you have power because your age alone puts you in a different age bracket of expectation, or at least it should. That's all I'm trying to say is like, look, I don't have the wisdom. I'm not Bassem's age. I'm like still young. I'm 35, 36, but I'm trying to get people to understand. It's like, we still need to make sure we are showing up. And remember that these videos this week about dressing your age and stuff were not meant for 22-year-olds. I wasn't talking to 19-year-olds. I made that clear time and time again. I am talking about people in their 30s who literally are like, I don't ever want to grow up. I don't want to grow up. Okay, then you go hang out with Aiden Ross. Then you go hang out with the Nelk Boys. Because that's what you're doing. That's what you're basically saying. You're saying, I don't ever want to grow up. Okay, cool. So go hang out at the kids' table and know you may not have a say in anything. Because some of us are trying to have a say in stuff. We're trying to say, hey, we need to be better people. But if you're going to sit here and be like, I don't ever want to grow up. Well, then why are you talking? Why are you talking? And I'm not saying kids can't advocate for themselves, but I say kids are kids. They should advocate for themselves. Adults who refuse to grow up, you're basically saying, I don't want a say. You're saying, I don't want to say. And that's the problem. Okay? Chad says, I don't think they'd have taken him seriously without saying this. You know, who knows if he will get through to them? Because that's the thing. Who knows what would get through to people and give them a bubble pop? He said this, and I think what this does is just like helps the people who are already open to it. I don't know if the Nelk Boys will change. I don't know. And that's what's interesting. Now, if the Nelk Boys don't change, then that's also something to consider. Because that's what I do with everybody I meet, is I try to meet them where they are. I give them opportunities. If they don't take the opportunity, then eventually I write them off. And I know people say, oh my God, I can't believe you're writing them off. Well, I'm writing them off, but maybe a therapist or maybe a friend or maybe a priest or maybe a Something else can take them on, okay? And that's the point, is like, I can only do so much. We can only do so much. But at the end of the day, like, you have to meet people where they are and understand how they got there. And then they have to understand how they got there. They have to understand they have problems. And that's really hard for people to process, right? Chad said this is similar to yesterday, where people are worried you can't hold others accountable if you humanize them. But here it's a worry of we can't hold them accountable if they weren't 4D plotting it all. Yeah. Chad says, I've met a lot of people who dress like adults but act like irresponsible children. Yeah, well, that's the thing though, right? It's both. So again, okay, if you walked into your friend's apartment and there was like 20 bags of trash and the sink was full of dishes and there was like food rotting on the table, would you be concerned? Just, would you be concerned? Would that be concerning to you? Or would you just say, oh, they're an adult and this is how they live? This is just like how they live. They have money. They have a good job. They pay rent. They're really good at bills. They have $50,000 in savings. You know what I mean? Like, they're an adult. This is just their lifestyle. That's how I feel about your clothing choices. That's how I feel about some of your clothing choices. Sometimes I see people's clothing and I say, hey, are you okay? I'm concerned. And I need you to know, if you think it might be you, it probably isn't, but it could be. Okay? I don't know. I don't know what you look like. I'm just saying some of y'all look like the house I just described, and I'm concerned. Okay? That's all I'm saying. And know that for every person that's concerned about that house, there's a person who walks into that house and doesn't think anything of it. Okay? For every one of us that is concerned about that house, somebody is walking in and saying, feels like home. You know? That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, people, that's all I'm trying to say. Discord said some of us are trying to do something 100%. He ain't getting through at all. I have no good faith for these men. They enjoy superficial shit too much. Their families got money. They're forever going to say fuck it? Probably. They are probably forever going to say fuck it, you know? Discord says, I want to be grown but still in touch with my inner child. I think the most healed adult is responsible, but is also the adult that remembers what it was like to be a kid and can have fun but not be a kid. I agree with that. Those men will never learn a single thing because those men never actually gave a shit, and they're just saying what they have to say to get through to the conversation. Yeah, I think that's actually, a lot of people said that they're just doing this to kind of appease the audience that was mad at them. You know? Because funny enough, there is a huge boy bubble, the boys who like football, international football, like the Speeds, who are pro-Palestinian. Like, Speed has been very pro-Palestine, but a lot of football players are, right? And that's the thing, is like I can't read these people's minds, but what matters eventually is their actions. That's it. I can't read your mind, and I think you might have good intentions, not them, but in general, but eventually all that matters is your follow through. All that matters is like, are you going to change? Do I hear a difference in your language, a difference in how you show up? Did you get it? Does it feel embodied? Because there's also a stage where there might be a cope. And this is the Ethan Kleins of the situation, where Ethan coped his change. Ethan was like, hey, I noticed our audience was mostly Nazis, so we're going to change the way we talk. Then he changed the way he talked, but then reverted back to that conservative perspective the moment it became too hard, because he didn't actually have an embodied change. It was a cope. So I think the cope is important because sometimes it's like a fake it till you make it. But what I'm really looking for is an embodied change. If Ethan was really progressive, he wouldn't be who he is right now. But because he never embodied that change, he reverted back. The mask came off. So this is why that's why I say, like, just the way you show up isn't enough. I need it to follow by action. It's not just the way you show up. Listen, I know a lot of people who came from really traumatized positions in life. And people who were better off than them would say, oh, they're such hard workers. They just do so good. People discount them, but they do so good for themselves because they require of them the bare minimum. It's actually racism. It is. I think it's racism. In this case, it was a brown family and a white family. And the white family, who was better off and expected more of their kids than they would ever expect of that brown family's kids, is because the brown family, the best they could do was like mow their lawn, and everyone's like, they work so hard. Everyone's like, oh, they pay the bills. but nobody ever put the pressure on that family to go to college and to do the next thing, but they did on their white kids. I want you to process that information. It's that bigotry of low expectations right there, right? It's that expectation of low. It's the, I don't expect much from you, so I'm so proud of you for doing the bare minimum. And I'm saying, no. But also the white families that put so much pressure on their kids to do the things perfectly and their kids end up committing suicide because it's so stressful, also not the answer. Also not the answer. Okay? So we need to find actual wisdom in how we are raising the next generation and the expectation we have of that generation. It has to be a balance. We want deconstructed philosophical perspectives coming in to help us move away all the bad and only, focus on the good of what actually helps people. Healing trauma, being educated, uplifting communities. And also it starts with us and it moves out. And the community is a reflection of us as a whole. So again, it's okay that you don't want to necessarily be the leader in the community, but then make sure in your own life, though, you're holding yourself to a specific standard that matches your expectations of how you judge others to some extent. I certainly am never going to ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Okay? Which is the reason why I'm telling you out loud, hey, for the next 4 years, when Trump is out of office, fingers crossed he leaves, I will be 40 or nearing 40, and I would like to be more grown up. I would like to change the way I come up on stream. I would like to change the way that I appear. I would like to make sure that I keep my Brittany-ness, but I elevate it up. I elevate the process. I'm still a cheeseburger vegan, but I'm going to elevate it to Michelin star. Okay? I'm going to elevate it so it feels like, okay, I'm there, right? So I want to do it in real time with you because that's how I am as a content creator. Not because I'm judging you, because I'm judging myself. I'm looking at myself and saying, okay, we're 36. We don't want to be Ethan Klein at 40. God forbid I'm Ethan Klein at 40. And you know what I'm saying? Ethan got to 40 and he's the biggest, most immature person I've ever seen in my life. He's a dad of 3. He's very successful. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a problem with Ethan Klein, this is the same problem I have with people who don't dress their age, because it's related to not acting your age. Now, to be fair, have you noticed Ethan has changed the way he's dressed? Do you notice that Ethan is trying to dress his age, but still have his own style? Do you notice he's not really dressing in those hoodies anymore? Now he's in collared shirts. Do you notice that Ethan is actually trying to dress a little bit better? He's still Ethan Klein, though. He's still Ethan Klein, though. And that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, girls, we're up here criticizing all these boys, all these immature boys, and then we're not looking at ourselves. And that's because we give ourselves a lot of credit for going to therapy and doing the work and reading the books, and we think we're more mature than them, right? Because we're less bigoted and we're more introspective, for sure. But that doesn't mean we don't have room to grow. It doesn't mean we're not ready to move on to the next juncture of our lives. And remember, on this channel and in my life, I am never trying to appeal to Republicans, because in the future, they shouldn't even exist. They're so bigoted. Bigotry is not the future, but it will remain the present for as long as we do not grow up and be good community members. And I'm just trying to do that. I'm just trying to be a good community member.